It's probably crossed your mind at some point or another, or maybe never, to get on cycle, but to only do one cycle. And when I refer to cycle, of course, I am referring to getting on anabolic androgenic steroids. A lot of people do it, and it is a sought-after thing these days, apparently, due to all the random kids on the internet publicizing their journey on steroids.
I want to look the best. I don't ever want to feel like I'm second best. I want to look the best.
But if you did, you're probably thinking one cycle and then I'm done. So what happens after the one cycle? Is it horrible? Am I going to lose all my gains? Is the world going to end? Is my penis going to shrink to the size of a Skittle? Well, thankfully, in this video, we have someone to tell us with absolutely no medical background or any formal understanding of endocrinology or exogenous hormonal therapy. And they're going to break down all these concepts and make it super understandable for us. And this, by no means, is propaganda whatsoever. It's actually completely legit.
You are fake news.
It's not legit at all. It's actually fucking horrible. I want to break down how bad this really is. I mean, how groundbreaking and revolutionary and conceptually important this is for the youth to understand. So I don't know if you guys have heard the channel ASAP Science. I don't even want to get into political terms, but it's not necessarily my favorite channel for actual quality, accurate scientific information. I'm a huge fan of some others out there that are much more reputable in terms of actually applying the science that they speak about. But we have this channel discussing a very specific matter for us today. What happens when you quit steroids? Well, let's take a look. What does happen?
3 million people currently use steroids to build muscle mass in the US alone, and one survey found that 30% of gym users were currently taking steroids. Taking roids to get gains in the gym is clearly very popular, but what happens to your brain, body, skin, and testicles when you decide to quit steroids?
So I totally agree with them, for one, right? Like, it's very important to understand that using steroids is obviously very popular. What's not to love about it? You get huge, you get absolutely all the women in the gym. Completely lie there, you absolutely get no women in the gym. In fact, you get way more men in your DMs every single day asking for your underwear. I'm not even kidding, and it is disgusting, and it needs to stop. Someone needs to call these people out on Instagram, and it needs to be managed appropriately. Instagram, if you're watching this video, which you're likely not, please do something about this. My DMs are constantly filled with waves and droves of men asking for ridiculous items of clothing of mine, and I don't want to give it to them, nor do I care or am I interested in their money. So please do something about that. Let's continue.
After 24 hours of quitting steroids, you will feel extremely tired and fatigued because of how the steroids have messed with your hormone systems, specifically your gonadotropin releasing hormone. GnRH is released.
I'm just going to stop right there because there's so much misinformation already in the first point he's making, which is 24 hours after you stop taking steroids. Hormone levels don't crash, believe it or not. In fact, you could take the shortest ester steroid, which is usually an acetate or a propionate in forms of testosterone. Again, I have to be very careful these days, guys, because YouTube's TOS is just absolutely murderous. I mean, it is like a 50 cal machine gun waving down thousands of people every single day. But generally speaking, there's a lot of different steroids that use these shorter ester compounds, propionates, acetate, and even those which have about a peak serum concentration level of 3 to 10 days. It depends on which one you're specifically using and how the pharmacokinetics of that one are, but it's going to take about probably 10 days to have a relevant drop in hormones to even notably change your personality, let alone if you're taking a normal estrogen steroid, which is what most people do, what is most clinically advised, and in general, basically what is sold out there in the bodybuilding world. You're going to be a perfectly fine human being 24 hours after you stop taking steroids. In fact, you will be fine for likely about 6 months to some of the longest esters we have in steroid compounds, enanthate, undecanoate. We can be on steroids for well over a year after stopping steroids. It doesn't take 24 hours. It takes months of time to clear these drugs. I mean, the clearance is about 5 half-lives, okay? So just in general, a little bit of pharmacokinetics for you here. The clearance of any drug is about 5 half-lives of that drug. So let's say I take Adderall, and the clearance is about 12 hours. It's going to take 5 tried iterations of 12 hours to completely clear the drug from my system. There'll be residual amounts that don't really affect my physiology too much, but they're still going to be there. The same is true about testosterone and its other variants of anabolics, as well as the esters attached or bound to those carbon chains to make them essentially break apart at different rates within your body. The longer ones that take longer to break apart and assimilate into your hormonal system or milieu usually take, well, gee willikers, the literally like the middle of the road, not the longest hormone esters or the shortest, but the middle of the road is about a 10 to 12 day half-life. So multiply that by 5 and you have generally, for spitting average here, right? You could be genetically different in how many carboxylases you have and different enzymes that would actually contextually change the pharmacokinetics of these drugs. But I'm getting too deep into the first point here. Understand these compounds are still going to be in your blood for probably at least 2 months before you have any exchange of endogenous to exogenous dependence. So no, your hormone levels do not crash. They don't even begin to come down in 24 hours or even slightly come down in 24 hours. 2, your energy levels will not crash. In fact, you could ask most anybody on any form of hormone, whether that is testosterone replacement therapy or not, that when you get off of the hormones, when you actually stop injecting the hormones, you usually actually begin to feel better for a short period of time afterwards, because you're not injecting yourself with an exogenous compound and that immune response isn't happening as it normally would.
GnRH is released from the hypothalamus and through a series of chemical pathways stimulates your testes to produce testosterone and maintain size. Steroids block the release of GnRH. This is why steroids can shrink your testicles, and why now, with a lack of steroid consumption, your body is lacking testosterone production on its own. The steroids that you were consuming were mimicking the testosterone, so now without the steroids, you have lower testosterone. This is known as hypogonadism, and you start to lose energy.
Okay, so completely right. Steroids don't block GnRH. That's a completely, I don't even know where he came up with that idea or statement, but what happens is that basically create a negative feedback loop. Because testosterone converts into estrogen, estradiol, which is a aromatized variant of testosterone, is what gives negative feedback to the pituitary gland, telling it that there is enough prerequisite hormone that it doesn't need to produce anymore. It's not blocking anything. It's not telling anybody to stop doing anything. It's just a feedback system, similar to insulin in your blood. But is he right about hypogonadism? Well, yes, clinically he is, because when you take these exogenous hormones, your endogenous production, or inside your body, the production of hormones, will downregulate. Very well known, very honestly, a real side effect of steroids. But it's not as serious as you think. And I'll talk about that in a couple points later from now.
At 48 hours of quitting, you are extremely fatigued because of how low testosterone now affects the red blood cells in your body. Your body relies on red blood cells to...
Bros, we're cooking on this one. I'll be real with you. I watched this thing on like 2 times speed really quickly. I haven't actually gone through it thoroughly, and now that I'm listening to it slowly, it's tweaking me a little bit more. So we're gonna dig into this one hardcore.
Your body relies on red blood cells to transfer oxygen as a source of energy throughout your body. Testosterone binds to cells in the kidney to stimulate the release of erythropoietin, EPO, which promotes red blood cell production. With the lack of testosterone from quitting steroids, your body has less red blood cell production, which means less oxygen and less energy for cells.
Holy Christ, brother, we have issues here. Okay, red blood cells are not just going to die and erupt in your body. And you'll see this as a common trend with this guy, as he talks about matter as if it just disappears within seconds of changing something about you in a lot of his videos. Your red cell production just starts going down. No, it fucking doesn't, okay? For one, as we spoke about, the mediation of hormones is a long, protracted timeline. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a week. It doesn't happen over 2 weeks. It is a very slow and arduous process. The red blood cells are a very long-lived part of our body. They don't just spawn and then get destroyed immediately. They're actually about 90 days of lifetime in our blood. And that's why when you get a hemoglobin A1C, it's about an average of what your blood glucose was for the last 90 days, because your red blood cells live on average 90 days. So if you do stop producing as much red blood cells or have less erythropoiesis, you would then just stop producing red blood cells.
I'm done. No!
you wouldn't just lose all of them, and you wouldn't certainly just have this incapacity to breathe or oxygenate blood or muscles or your brain. It's completely fallible, whatever he's saying. I don't know where he got this information from. You would have to wait at least 3 months in a very hypothetical situation, and then even then, your body is so wildly regulated, if it senses a dramatic drop in one way or another, you will immediately produce or stop producing red blood cells to counteract too sharp of a drop. Think about when people climb Mount Everest. People who climb Mount Everest have to stop at a base camp for a couple days to get the amount of red blood cells that are needed to sustain themselves at higher elevation levels. But when they come back down, it's not like those just suddenly stop being produced. In fact, if they did, they would still suffocate on their way down, but they just simply stay there. Marathon runners have an average of, 60 hemoglobin, which is crazy high, but it works for them. And when they aren't training, it goes back down. But are they starving for oxygen? Absolutely not. They're still some of the best athletes in the world, even when they aren't competing.
You might remember the discussion with Lance Armstrong and how he used EPO to increase his red blood cell count to win the Tour de France. Here's a clip of him admitting it to Queen Oprah.
Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was one of those banned substances EPO?
Yes.
Live strong, baby, especially if you're on EPO. So again, at 48 hours, you have lower EPO, less testosterone, and less energy from quitting steroids.
Check this shit out. This is wild what he says next.
At 72 hours, your sleep is now affected by the low testosterone. The exact mechanism that testosterone affects sleep is not known, but there have been plenty of research showing that poor sleep can reduce testosterone levels and vice versa. One study showed that for every hour of sleep loss, there was a testosterone drop. Even people with obstructive sleep apnea, which affects their quality of sleep, have been shown to have lower testosterone levels. So when testosterone levels are low, this makes it harder for you to get a good night's sleep. Not getting a good night's sleep makes your testosterone levels lower, so you might notice that quitting steroids has affected your ability to sleep.
Holy Jesus, Mother and Mary. I'm sorry, I'm not very religious. I'm talking about Jesus and God a lot.
Holy cow!
Oh my God!
But seriously, my brother in Christ, look at this information. 72 hours, your sleep is interrupted by testosterone. What if we just for a second looked at the data that you're saying? You even said it yourself. When people sleep poorly, their testosterone comes down. When people have sleep apnea, their testosterone comes down. One mediates the other, but not the other way around. This is called correlation versus causation. The causation of the lower testosterone in these cases and studies that you're bringing up are because they got low sleep. The low sleep caused a low output of hormonal diurnal rhythms in the next day. But if we were just to look at the facts here, low testosterone does not directly mediate sleep. And he even says we don't know how testosterone mediates sleep, and it's because it probably doesn't. In fact, what we know from humans is that when the sun is high, being diurnal and circadian based humans, the testosterone levels in a male are generally the highest. When the sun is low at the horizon and below, testosterone levels are generally the lowest. So if we're talking in a realistic sense, lower testosterone could plausibly be something that actually improves your sleep quality. Wild miscommunication here of data and completely interpreting it in a way that fits a narrative, which I hate. I hate seeing this shit because it's so toxic and it doesn't move anybody in any direction that's positive. It just misinforms mass amounts of people, and then no one tries to find out for themselves what is the truth and then develop that truth even further in space.
After a week of quitting, you will feel muscle aches and joint pain because testosterone usually promotes the release of anti-inflammatory cytokines from your immune cells. This protects against inflammation. Now, since the steroids affected your hormone system and you have lower testosterone, the inflammation can accumulate in muscles and joints. This is also around the time you may see that muscles are reducing in size because testosterone is less present to help with the maintenance of muscle. So it is after a week that the gains start to noticeably go away.
Whew, okay, so let's continue to talk about it. If you don't remember, my first point is that the half-lives of these drugs are significantly longer than he's making it out to be. At 1 week, you're still not going to experience any difference. No difference in your life. Zero impact. Outside of the fact that you're not having to inject yourself with something or orally ingest a 17-alkylated steroid compound. And this whole joint pain thing, it's like, dude, this is delirium. Yes, steroids do inhibit glucocorticoids and mineral corticoids and can, in fact, create effects effects of lower perceived pain in certain joints due to a lack of inflammation. But the really key important part here is, why would the joints be inflamed in the first place? And I would assume that generally if people are living a lifestyle that's anywhat in moderate considerations healthy, then this wouldn't even be an issue. And then again, you haven't even eliminated the shortest ester possible, the one that is almost harder to get than enanthate or cypionate, the propionate or acetate. The serum concentration levels of these steroids are still going to be at the levels they were when you were pretty much injecting them, and there would be no downward trend in any endogenous level of hormones at this point. Again, I think it's really important to understand, but if you're taking steroids, let's just say a person or a bodybuilder is taking a steroid called boldenone or equipoise. I made a video about it long in the past. If you're interested in hearing more about the history and pharmacology of that, you can certainly go watch that video. It is a very long ester compound. Usually it is in the form of equipoise or boldenone on decanate. Now, this ester is going to last, and there will be metabolites of these drugs for longer than a year. There has been data that supports seeing metabolites of equipoise many months after using it. I'm talking 16, 18 months, still active hormones in your blood. The idea that you just stop and these hormones disappear is really destructive. It's really destructive, and people need to be careful about this shit. And huge news flash, this is hilarious to me that people still believe this stuff, that bodybuilders are just perplexingly on high doses of steroids all year round, and that's how they're so big and huge and they're unfair and they have an unnatural advantage. It's like, fuck no, dude, just grow up and realize your own deficiencies as a human being. The reality is if you get off steroids, you will not lose your gains. Fouad Abiad has talked about this numerous times on his podcast, how even if he's simply just trying not to eat, his body weight still stays at 240, 250 and not injecting anything for multiple weeks on accident. And this is something I've done historically. And when I was fighting Muay Thai recently, I wasn't doing anything. I was injecting zero, nothing. And I literally was still the biggest human in Thailand, probably in Pattaya. Like, there is just such a discrepancy here. You don't lose muscle when you come off of steroids. You lose muscle when you stop training hard, when you stop eating right, and when you stop living the lifestyle that you should, which is usually just a healthy and controlled lifestyle. Will you get flatter and less full? Absolutely, yes, but you're not going to lose structural tissue, the matter that you built, the actual protein structures that are in your body. Don't just disintegrate and go bye-bye after a week. It took months and years to build that tissue, to literally put structural tissues together, bend them and wind them and sew them together to create an organism that is a different size, proportion, and acts differently at a cellular level. That just doesn't disappear. Oh my god, it's like the simplest concept ever to understand. If I put oil in a car and the oil goes down, it's not because the oil just disappeared, it's because it burned. But that burning process takes so long that I almost can't even measure it. And that is true here. You're not going to lose your gains. You're not going to become this withered away version of yourself. Even if you do come off completely and don't go on a therapy like testosterone therapy or HCG or other things that I'll talk about soon here, you're still going to retain a lot of that muscle tissue.
At 1 month, you may notice erectile dysfunction. Again, since the steroids decrease natural GnRH production, this by proxy decreases the follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which help chemically message the testes to produce testosterone. The lack of testosterone is now affecting these hormones to the point that it may be hard to maintain and get a boner. Is that the scientific term? I don't know, erection? Moving on.
Okay, again, misinformation. So for one, hypogonadism affects about 1 in 6 cases of actual erectile dysfunction. Now, what's really important to state here is that erectile dysfunction itself, you can be hypogonadal and have a completely functional boner. And in fact, most cases, more often than not, that are causing erectile dysfunction are circulatory related. High blood pressure, cerebral blood flow issue, diabetes, kidney disease, I mean, you name it. They're more circulatory disorders or other organs that are causing issues, causing therefore an issue with your sexual organ. But it is not always hypogonadism. And you can have a concurrent case of a male with hypogonadism, hypertension, and diabetes. But if you fix, for example, the hypertension, he can have a perfectly healthy erection. Or you could have a male who's diabetic and has completely low testosterone. You increase his testosterone levels and he still has diabetes. He's still going to have erectile dysfunction. Testosterone barely mediates erectile health. In fact, estradiol is more of a sexual functioning hormone, and DHT, dihydrotestosterone, more so far beyond testosterone. And it's very clear that what is actually mediating the sexual characteristics of higher androgens in our system is DHT, dihydrotestosterone. It is not just intratesticular testosterone, which is great and all because it improves spermatogenesis and makes you more fertile and cool, right? But it doesn't actually do much in the sense of improving quality of sexual function. You can see this in males who were castrated at a young age, the evangelical children or something like that. I think I have the anime in my head, but you guys know what I'm referring to, I hope. The boys who got their nuts cut off so they could sing at a higher vocal pitch. I don't know. Anyways, they still had no sexual dimorphisms beyond simply having a smaller penis due to not having enough testosterone. But what's odd is they had bigger muscles, but sexual function was still the same. And what you see is that the DHT is mediating most of, if not all of, the penile function.
After 2 months, the acne that has been building up all over your face and body will finally start to disappear. Testosterone stimulates the growth of sebaceous glands in your skin, which produce acne. The low testosterone would reduce the acne's presence.
So after 2 months, we are reducing acne. Now, I'll give him a fair point. At this point, now some of the hormones are eliminated from your blood, hopefully, right? Depending on which ones you've taken and your individuality and genetic response to these specific things, but hopefully at this point, some of them have been eliminated. Will that reduce your acne? No. Surprise, it won't. In fact, what's more mediating towards acne development is the actual fluctuation of hormone levels. There's a reason that women often get more acne around their menstrual cycles. I love you guys, great. You bleed out of your thing every couple times a month. It's really odd and crazy. By the way, if you're a female and you need coaching, really great at managing that stuff. Hit me up down below, as well as males too. I know you guys don't bleed, but you still need some help with a lot of different things, like misinformation being fed to you, and how to actually approach this whole system to make the best out of your physique. But point being is that the hormonal fluctuations are what causes acne. Think when you're in your prepubescent years and you have high levels of testosterone and low levels of testosterone, and those are the years that you're usually getting the acne development. So I don't think it's really a concern at 2 months that you would have acne, nor would it be cured. In fact, if anything, if you already had it or if you were developing it, it would be probably at its worst in this point.
After 3 months of stopping steroids, depressive symptoms and mood changes may get worse without testosterone replacement therapy. Some studies have shown a higher suicide rate in those that have previously used.
All right, I'm just going to shut it off at this point because I honestly cannot stand this anymore. There's a lot of things that complete misinterpretations of data or just complete misleading, using data as the mediator to mislead. I hate this. Again, it sucks to see someone using actual science as a vehicle to mislead people, but not actually being very transparent about the science that they're reading, and probably not even going into the methods in the studies that they're reading to see how they were done, nor who they were funded by, and all those good details, which is really important to do, not being done here, obviously. And it's a 5-minute video. I have to cut the dude a break, right? He's trying to make this fit towards general population and get people to watch this so he gets higher view counts. Totally cool, and I understand. This video obviously is not for those people, but hopefully you understand that there's a lot of misinformation that can be interpreted from this video, whether he meant it or not. And I think what's really important to understand is that a lot of this information can be completely mitigated. I mean, if this was the problem, if people were experiencing this when they came off of cycle, it could be completely mitigated. And sometimes that mitigation doesn't even require you to do anything. There's a great study done in males, 100 males who were taking anabolic androgenetic steroids, and it was called the Harlem study. Some of you might have heard about this, and it's a really good read, and I highly suggest you read it. It's open access, completely free. Just type in Harlem men's study, and you'll see it. It's very clear and out there on social media, stuff like that. But what you need to understand is that in this study, they took basically half of the people in it and gave them a post-cycle therapy after coming off of hormones, and then tracked their progress over a year. Post-cycle therapy in this case was human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG, and then the other group didn't have any form of therapy when they came off, and they also tracked them for a year. And what were the results? Well, believe it or not, about after 3 months, everyone was back to normal, whether they took a post-cycle therapy or not. 3 months was all it took to restore natural spermatogenesis, natural testosterone production, and natural homeostasis within all endocrine systems. So how viable is all this information if this is the reality? The Harlem study shows us that this actually isn't an issue at all. I can't really explain. He goes on to say that you take a year to get your erectile function back, and it takes 7 months to get your testes back to normal size. And it's just like, this isn't valid information. I don't know where he's getting it from. But let me give you the secret sauce. If you're coming off steroids, yes, there is going to be side effects. I'm not trying to sweeten the blow here. There will be negative consequences to your actions, as is anything you do, as is when you play with biology at large, taking SSRIs, Adderall, modafinil, any compound. There is going to be an opposite and equal reaction that's less favorable than the one you started taking that compound for. It's just biology. There's no free lunch.
Yes, science!
But it is to be mitigated. It is very easy to get off of a cycle for good and never get back on hormones and have zero issues. We have really great compounds that are cheap and easy to access for most people out there. There's things like enclomiphene, there's things like HCG, there's things like HMG. There's so many compounds, those three alone could be more than enough to make you completely back to normal after the drug is cleared from your system, which will take 5 to 6 weeks on average, and then for some of those less fortunate people, 6 months to a year. But my point is your endogenous hormonal function can be completely restarted within a month if you really wanted it to be. And I'm not trying to say that steroids are healthy to take or it's a smart idea or anything like that, but what I am saying is that there's a lot of misinformation on steroids out there, and you guys need proper guidance. And the reason I made this channel was to create some form of advice or guidance or something to people who are experimenting with hormones, because there's many of you out there, and it really sucks that YouTube tends to attack these videos, disable comments, disable monetization, all sorts of stuff, just because I'm being very upfront and honest. This is not something that is a small issue in America or across the world. Thousands, millions, billions of people are taking anabolic steroids. If you're in a country like mine, Thailand right now, you can simply walk to a pharmacy and get whatever steroid you want, come back home and start injecting it, and that's it. End of story. And so getting proper guidance is extremely important, and I think this video is going to do well, hopefully with giving you some guidance. But the moral is, hopefully that you can get into this video, go to my other videos, and learn a little bit more about this stuff before you ever partake down this path at all. Because there is consequences. There really, really is. And if you need guidance, I'm not trying to plug my shit, but down below, there is a link, and that link does provide coaching. And if you are interested in coaching with me and my team, we guide you every step of the way. There is no amount of information that's withheld from you, and we provide everything that you need to be held accountable, but also to be the safest human being that you can be while achieving the wildest results you've ever imagined with your physique. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video, guys.